I think we're exiting this very regulatory environment to more of a smart regulation environment. Regulation is important for our industry, but it has to be the right balance of regulation to allow innovation to occur while protecting the markets. So hopefully we're entering that, and that's a big part of the topics being discussed.
Welcome to Smarter Markets, a weekly podcast featuring the icons and entrepreneurs of technology, commodities, and finance, ranting on the inadequacies of our systems and riffing on ideas for how to solve them. Together, we examine the questions: are we facing a crisis of information or a crisis of trust? And will building smarter markets be the antidote? This episode is brought to you in part by Abax Exchange, where trading in centrally cleared, physically deliverable LNG and carbon futures contracts is now underway. Ready for smarter markets?
Welcome to Scenes from the FIA's Boca 50, the International Futures Industry Conference. I'm Dave Greeley, Chief Economist at Abax Technologies. Smarter Markets returned to the FIA's Boca Conference to be a part of Boca 50, the 50th anniversary of the International Futures Industry Conference. We partnered with the FIA to interview a wide range of futures industry participants. We asked them how long they've been coming to Boca, how the conference has evolved, and what keeps them coming back. We also asked them to share with us the big topics and issues they were at Boca to address this year and discuss with others, and what new derivatives products and financial technology they were most excited about. We've compiled a selection of those 9 interviews into this special episode of Smarter Markets. If you would like to listen to the full interviews, they're available on our website, smartermarkets.media, on the SmarterMarkets Presents media page. They're also available on our second podcast channel, SmarterMarkets Presents, available on all major podcast platforms. Our guests in order of appearance in this episode are Walt Lukin, President and CEO at the FIA; Alan Green, Executive Vice President, Managing Director for Futures and Options at Trading Technologies; Stuart Connolly, CEO at Cloud Margin; Thomas Texier, Head of Clearing at Marex; Travis Schwab, CEO at Aventus; Ryan Maroney, CEO at CQG; Anthony Crudelli, Senior Vice President at Ninja Trader; Alan Guarino, Vice Chairman, Korn Ferry; and Joe Rea, Chief Commercial Officer at Abax Exchange and Clearinghouse. We hope you enjoy these scenes from the FIA's Boca 50, celebrating 50 years of the International Futures Industry Conference. Smarter Markets is back here at Boca 50 with the FIA, and we're honored to be joined by Walt Lukin, President and CEO of the FIA. Thanks for making time for us, Walt.
Dave, great seeing you as always.
I loved your opening address when you said that we needed to step back and let the magic happen here. So I just wanted to get a sense from you, like 50 years of Boca. What are you thinking about the whole event?
Well, as I talked about in my opening remarks, Boca is evolved like our industry's evolved. I think our industry was much more US-centric back in the days when Boca started. A lot of this was a reward for floor traders coming down to the event in this Florida sunshine. But I think as you've seen, its evolution, it's now about really trying to bring together a community to find solutions to problems. And so over this week, people find this incredibly efficient because the whole global ecosystem of our industry is here together, even beyond our industry. I saw folks from Oracle, from Microsoft, this convergence of our industry with technology all happens here. And that's where new thoughts, new ideas come, creativity comes from those combinations that happen here. I talked about in my opening address to let the magic happen. Sometimes you got to give a little space to things to allow these things to come together, to ideas to form. And so hopefully that's the environment we've created here at Boca.
Curious, in terms of the topics that are on the agenda and the conversations happening, what are the big ones this year?
Well, it's almost as if we're exiting a super cycle of regulation, in my view. I think certainly the elections and the Trump administration is a big topic. And what does that mean? Tariffs, maybe a more friendly regulatory environment, maybe less access to foreign markets. We're very much an open access trade association. So I think people are struggling with those cross policies. But the truth is that, post-financial crisis, has had a long arc. You're not only seeing the talks of deregulation, I shouldn't say deregulation, but rationalizing regulation in the United States, but also a lot in EU as well. That EU has gone too far with some of its regulations, and they've found themselves in a place where businesses are not interested in doing business in the EU. They're not as productive as they'd like to be. So the Draghi report, the Letta report in Europe, is saying a lot of the talking points that you're hearing here in the United States. So I think we're exiting this very regulatory environment to more of a smart regulation environment. Regulation is important for our industry, but it has to be the right balance of regulation to allow innovation to occur while protecting the markets. So hopefully we're entering that, and that's a big part of the topics being discussed.
And I wanted to ask you about the going forward piece, because as we're marking and celebrating 50 years of Boca, how are you thinking about shaping it for the next decade?
It's about making sure that we're picking up on the right themes to make it attractive for the next generation. And we're always trying to look around the corner of who are the right market participants to be down here. Certainly we have traditional finance, and those people are a part of our industry, but we're starting to see, more from the digital asset world. We're starting to see more from the technology world that is servicing our industry. I mean, when you think about what exchanges are nowadays, they're not trading floors anymore. They're technology companies, multifaceted technology companies. Yes, the important part of that is bringing these platforms together, buyers and sellers. But importantly, they're also servicing, the information that flows from that. How do people communicate around those trades? All the things that they do, the indexes that they build out of the information they get. So we try to now service and see who are the new players, who are the startups. So as you look around Boca, there's not only the traditional finance people, but you see the upcoming exchanges, the new ideas, the prediction markets, a big one. So those are the people we're trying to curate, to nurture, because who knows what they're going to be in 5 to 10 years, and Boca has to be there for them as well.
My name's Alan Green. I'm the EVP and Managing Director of the Futures and Options business at Trading Technologies.
And what brings you back to Boca every year?
I mean, every year, it's really the people. So one of the things that I love about this business, the futures and options business in particular, is even though it's a global business, it's still a business that is based on relationships. So being able to come here and meet all of those people from all over the world every year is just a massive pull for me.
Have you seen the conference over those 10, 15 years change in terms of the people who come? I imagine there's a lot more technology people coming each year.
I think it has changed, but, maybe not to the extent that you might imagine. This is still a business-led conference. So I think that technology has always been present. Well, I can't say always, but since I've been coming, it has always been present. But it's always been technology with a business focus. So, I don't think this is a technology conference. This is a futures and options conference. And when we have got technology people coming here, it is with a very direct correlation to how they can improve this particular ecosystem.
That's great. I'm curious, from your vantage point at Trading Technologies, where are you seeing the spaces for technology to improve the markets?
It's hard to know where to start. I think we're on a journey. I think it's a journey that we're going on in different asset classes. At Trading Technologies, we think that one of the key points is to be able to have a true global network that is a SaaS platform. And I'll just go into a little bit as to why I think that's important. Technology is not really useful if you're spending all of your time integrating different technologies, multiple places, and having to do that across the globe, across your different, vendors. If you can go to a single platform that does all of that integration for you, I think it just makes everything a lot quicker. So we have pretty much all of the futures venues connected up to our platform. You can hop onto us anywhere around the world, and we've got a wide variety of execution and order management and clearing tools available.
And it seems that many of the topics of conversation at the conference point to an increasing demand on the technology and things like the platform being more and more important. A lot of the conversations are around 24/7 or 24/5 trading, integrating artificial intelligence into trading platforms. How are you seeing a lot of these developments impacting what you're focused on at TT?
So I think from the pure technology place, data is the key. AI is only as good as the data that you feed it. So having a curated set of data is really critical. We've been using that kind of thing for our algo development for many, many years. As we now move into perhaps less of an emphasis on individuals and more using AI tools, they still need to have the same kind of data. So that's a really important part as we move forward. Going to your point, though, on 24/5, 24/7, there are two elements to that. Having always-on platforms is part of it. Having the flexibility to do your maintenance upgrades on different components at different times. That's something that we have, right? That's something that, along with providers that, we use on the cloud, it makes it very, very easy for us to do. And then there's the people piece. Have you got the right team, who are able to work around whatever that correct life cycle is? These are things that most firms are addressing. To be clear, we have been 24/5.5, for a long period of time. 24/7 is already beginning to happen.
Stuart Connolly, I'm the CEO of Cloud Margin. In our world, it's no more than data, right? It's just, all these organizations, whether you're trading derivatives, you're trading futures, you're trading whatever it is, it's about how you are consuming that data and how you then ingest that data and how you then receive that data back to do all of the other processes, right? So the complicated and difficult thing is you create a whole bunch of legacy processes that tell you, I have to manage my data in this box. And that's the only way I can manage my data, right? And so that becomes a restriction, that becomes a parameter, that becomes a challenge for people to deal with. Solving that data challenge, like whether you're solving it for client onboarding reasons, for collateral management reasons, whether for trading reasons, it's about just solving that data component. And the good, successful software companies are the ones that are helping clients solve that data challenge, right? So that's what we're trying to do.
Well, let's turn back to what you're doing when you're at the office. Really curious, we're very interested on Smarter Markets about understanding what new markets, what new tools, what new technology are needed to move the futures, the derivatives industry forward. So I was curious your perspective on where do you see the biggest need for improved technology to make the derivatives industry work better?
I guess one of the challenges with a lot of technology, right, is it ages quite quickly, right? And so, with that, a very complex market like the derivatives market, there is a general kind of lack of efficiency in a lot of the processes from kind of, and when I really think about it, it's like trade execution. So the kind of the execution venues and the automation of execution that really kind of took off in kind of the early 2000s. And there was a lot of electronification of a lot of markets. By the way, there's still a lot of markets that are not on the electronic execution pathway and need to be, right? Because they're so inefficient, which means the cost of running those businesses is so high, which means the margin that you have to print when you're trading these products has to be so high. Therefore, the end price to the client is quite high, right? And so the access to those markets is difficult and challenging for people. So that kind of top level trade execution really got addressed very early on. But then what you found was the further down the food chain you went, the less investment there was in kind of technology to really solve some of the gooey, sticky, difficult bits of the process, right? And that's where certainly we came along post-financial crisis. So loads of volatility, loads of challenging markets, lots of ugly defaults in the market. 2008 crash, 2009, 2010, loads of regulation. Okay, there's a great idea. We think we can come along with a modern tech platform. And if you're going to do that and you want to do that in an efficient way, you've got to think about, okay, what's the best technology available to us now to do that? And 10 years ago, right, we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. So 10 years ago, that was cloud computing, right? That was the big thing then, right? It was like cloud computing. So a cloud native software as a service product, because ultimately it democratizes the access to a product. If you think about legacy technology platforms, they tend to be cumbersome, difficult. You have to install them in your own environments, in your own servers, in your own organizations. Then you have to maintain them. And it's difficult and it's clunky. And then when you want to do an upgrade, because there's some new regulation or there's some new product you need to cover. It's difficult. Again, it's expensive, it's challenging, it's slow. Whereas, cloud, being cloud native, being a SaaS platform, all of that stuff, you take that pain away from clients and they kind of put that burden onto us. We've got to stay modern. We've got to stay ahead of the curve. We've got to make sure that we're regulatory compliant in all the jurisdictions we operate. Today, our clients access us in 52 different countries around the world, right? So it's that kind of the modern technology, and like we are one of many, right? Which is fantastic. There's a fantastic ecosystem out here today, and you'll see a lot of it around the FIA conference of young, innovative companies that have, decided to approach a problem that exists in the financial markets and come and solve it with a modern technology approach. And so ultimately, we end up being almost the disruptors, right? We're the disruptors of the legacy technology that existed before, and we give them the challenge that they then need to try and catch up.
Hi, I'm Thomas Texier. I'm the head of clearing for Marex. So I don't think you'll believe me, but I've been in the futures market and in clearing for probably over 20 years, and this is my first time in Boca.
And for listeners who may not understand the role of clearing in the markets, could you give us the elevator pitch on your role and what you do at Marex?
Someone described this quite nicely. Clearing is everything that happens after a trade is done. That's essentially the settlement of the trades. And for us we settle the cash flows with the clearinghouse, and we settle the same cash flows with our clients. Clearing is a business of risk management because we guarantee all the transactions to the market. Therefore, we're at risk for all the margin payments from our customers. So my job is to run the clearing business at Marex, which means to grow it and to make sure it's run in the safest way possible. So risk management is a cornerstone of what we do. I'm an ex-risk manager myself. And so that's sort of my marrying the business growth with a safe and conservative approach to our business.
And some of the other topics I'm curious about your opinion about, both in your current role and as a former risk manager yourself. When you hear about things like, a lot of the interest is bringing more retail into the markets, or some of like the zero date options and crypto. How do you think about that from the risk manager hat? Does that require extra efforts on your part in clearing?
That's a great question. That's one of my favorite topics. So I think the futures market have proven to be a very, very resilient business model with the margins, the clearing, the reduction of counterparty risk. So I think these are perfect tools to bring new markets to the public. We've seen it in the Bitcoin futures. The market is being, is working extremely well. It's quite efficient as a future tool. And we see more and more institutional money going into crypto futures that are cleared and listed. The zero DT options is a bit more risky, so we need to be mindful of the potential risk. So this is, we're quite conservative in our approach to options. But bringing the retail market to these products is better if you bring them into a futures and a clear the space, and if you do it OTC or in an unregulated world, right? So that has to be a better option.
And I'm curious, given that you said clearing's everything that happens after the trade, imagine much of your business is driven by what people want to trade. And are there certain markets or products that you're seeing a strong demand for?
Yeah, absolutely. As a non-bank, Marex has a unique offering. So we're sometimes able to go into markets where maybe some of the other players might be a little behind or a little slower in getting into. So we were the first clearing member for FMX, for example. We cleared the first trades. But what we're seeing is obviously a lot of demand for crypto. Crypto futures is a big product for us. The other area where we're quite excited and we see a lot of demand is in the power and energy space. That energy transition, carbon, power, and gas are particularly interesting sort of triangle of trading opportunities between all these products. And it's also helping, the world moving to a more greener source of energy, and helping clients to risk manage and to manage their price risk around these instruments is particularly helpful.
Travis Schwab, CEO of Ventus.
You're kind enough to sit down with us on day one, morning of the conference. So I'll ask you more about what you're looking forward to than what you've experienced. Curious, are there any conversations you're looking forward to having with people this year, or things you want to hear?
Yeah, so conversation-wise, this is a great opportunity to take a temperature on where the market is, where we are viewing against our competitors. Obviously, we talk to our clients constantly, right? We have 120 clients globally. They're always giving us feedback, but this is all together. And so I think you have the opportunity for more substantive conversations that can dovetail nicely because you're hearing tidbits all over the place. And so I think that's really important for how we then kind of think about the year ahead. I mean, Boca really is kind of a temperature setter or tone setter for the remainder of the year. As far as things I kind of want to hear, we're in a unique spot, with the elections being there. You don't have commissioners and either of the big US regulators. For us, regulatory clarity is really important to our business and our clients. And so I'm really excited to see, hopefully, fairly quickly, in general, the environment, for instance, for cryptos is better, at least at a high level. But we need some kind of substantive kind of work to say, okay, what are the rules of the road, and some real clarity, because then that unleashes our clients to be innovative as well, like ABEX. And so I'm looking for that clarity, and hopefully we can get it fairly soon.
And curious, since we last talked on the podcast, what are you working on? What's the focus at Aventus right now?
For us, we always have kind of this 3-part approach. Is one, what are clients telling us based off what the regulators are telling them? And so we're always kind of doing that responsive. And that's really one of the reasons why you would go with Aventus, is you get that power of that community. And that community is across asset class, across the geography, across the globe. And so we're always just trying to tighten the loop between, someone saying, hey, it'd be great if the product did this, and we can put it into the product. And so that loop tightening has been a focus of ours. The second area is we've been really focused and made a ton of investments on our scaling capabilities. And so as exchanges, as the business continues to grow, as volatility has been around, volume records happening all over the place, that puts stress on the tech stack. And so anything we can do to really help alleviate those points of pressure, we've been doing. And so that's been an exciting effort for us. And we're getting to let's call it the end of the first set of innings on getting that out the door. And then the other area, like every other conversation in this room, is about AI. For us, we've been in that space. The product has supported machine learning for years. We've been using machine learning, but now we're going to take that next step and to provide a interface, a chat level interface to the product that gives deterministic results. And so we think that's pretty unique in the fact that if you ask ChatGPT the same question 3 times, you could get a different answer every single time. That doesn't work in the compliance trade surveillance area. And so we really have changed that model to give a interface that allows for deterministic results every single time and allows for that data security. Your data ABEX data cannot leave the confines of your environment and go to wherever for training. And so we make sure that the data is safe, it's security, you keep context, but then you have that deterministic response. And so we're super excited to have kind of the culmination of those kind of efforts happen this year.
And before I let you go, you mentioned AI. You mentioned you've been using machine learning for a long time. So I was curious if you have any advice from that experience for people who are new to the artificial intelligence space, just in terms of what they might reasonably expect or where it might work well in what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a great question. To start, we've been very deliberate on how we've rolled out these technologies because, A, we cannot put our clients in a bad position, and they have to have a perfect audit trail going backwards in time and have to be able to answer very clearly why things happened within the platform. And if you apply or use AI where it shouldn't be used, or you don't give explainability, or you don't give the same result every time, you really put your clients in a bad spot. So we've been very deliberate on and looked at very specific use cases about how to apply these techs because they don't apply to everything. And I think that would be my first set of guidance is don't start with AI, start with the business problem that you're trying to solve first, and then look at the best set of tools. Because if you need a specific result every single time, AI is not a good example to do that. Or, the way you have to shape it differently than a normal kind of probabilistic large language model. You think about the business problem that you're trying to solve first, and then you apply the right set of tech on top of that.
Ryan Maroney, I'm the CEO of CQG.
I know often people spend more time in the meetings than in the conference proper. Any certain topics of discussion that you found have been really interesting and engaging this year?
I haven't been in any of the presentations. It's just been meetings with clients. But, it's very much like partnership focused. And I think it's kind of emblematic of our industry and Boca 50 years and all that. It's if you rewind back 20, 30 years, most of the people in our industry were in the room together. Like that's where they did business. And so you did business through some level of cooperation and trust. And that kind of that value still exists in our industry. And I found that for whatever reason, when people come down to Boca, that like comes back and it's all like, how do we work together? What are the ways we could partner together? And so I think that's the common theme is it's just kind of very exploratory, but then real things do come out of this.
That's great. And of course, CQG is very involved in the technology end of the markets. Curious what you're seeing clients asking you for as the markets move forward.
We're a 45-year-old tech company. I don't know how many 45-year-old tech companies are out there, but yeah, we're a 45-year-old technology company. We've gone through a lot of kind of iterations along that time. What I hear the most from people over that time, CQG's kind of changed from a company that built trading software, and we were known for charting and analytics and data. I think we've changed in terms of who we are as a company. And I think the thing that people are asking us for and they expect from us, and I think it's an honor actually for us to play this role, but we've kind of been put in this situation where we're this kind of central hub where most market participants come to interact with each other. So whether you're an FCM and a broker, the exchanges, other ISVs, trading firms, oftentimes they're coming to us not just because they want to use our software, but because it's a way to get to the other participants in that ecosystem. And so it seems like most of my conversations are around that. How do we work with CQG and the other firms that CQG works with to create kind of a more healthy ecosystem?
As you look forward the next couple of years, what's the fun stuff or the really meaty projects that you're looking forward to working on?
The artificial intelligence stuff's interesting. So CQG is kind of like the godfather of charting, right? And charting was really taking historical data and using it to try to say, what do we think is going to happen next? What's the trend in the market? Whatever that might be. And so I think taking that idea, we've started working on some really cool predictive analytics, but on a much shorter time frame. So not, what's the data over the last hour or year, but what is it over the last like very short period of time? And can you use that in the same way to predict like what's going to happen next? And so we've been investing in some things around artificial intelligence for predictive analytics and what's going to happen next in the market, trying to then use those things to enrich our tools just to kind of make our customers, again, a little bit more successful. So that is definitely for our industry. I think everybody's trying to figure out what is their AI strategy. I feel like we believe if we really are going to be this kind of central party that everybody's pushing us to be, where they all want to come together and do business, I think our approach is going to be solve a couple of use cases like this, like the predictive analytics, like what's going to happen next in the market use case, to test this underlying kind of functionality that we want to build, like almost like a layer that people can build their own AI strategies on top of, because there's a lot of really hard work on the technology side just to make artificial intelligence work for our industry. And the reason for that is all the tooling that's out there. I'll give you an example. George Washington's president, that's as true today as it was yesterday, as it was 10 years ago, right? Data does, like the relevancy of data doesn't decay, except our industry, it does, because a trade that happened an hour ago means much less than a trade that happened a second ago. So there's this like decaying value of data over time that makes all of the AI tooling that exists out there in the overall world a little bit harder to use. And so to take that and adapt it for the financial world and then give people ways they can build on that so they don't have to do that first hard work, I think that's an area where we can kind of add value to the ecosystem without necessarily building a product for people. So that's where we're spending our time right now.
Anthony Crudelli, Senior Vice President, NinjaTrader Live.
And a big focus of lots of the sessions have been on the retail traders and how they're kind of transforming the futures markets. How do you see it from your seat?
I hosted a panel on that this year, the retail revolution. And the question I posed to the audience was, is this just happening now or has this been happening for over 20 years? So when I first started in the space in the mid 90s, the E-mini S&P was launched in 1997. And initially that was like, oh, okay, are we going to retail now, right? Because you took a contract, the S&P 500 pit contract. You didn't turn it into an electronic contract, but it was created alongside the pit. And then fast forward, you have micros, you have prediction markets, event contracts. And so more and more things are feeding towards the retail trader. So I would say that this revolution is more of an evolution. It's happened over time. I mean, the one thing that, with me joining forces with NinjaTrader is NinjaTrader has been ahead of the game, pretty much above everybody when it comes to retail trading, because again, futures only, focus on the retail trader. And you can go back 10 years ago as NinjaTrader was, a small little company, obviously much larger now.
And you hear the exchanges say, well, we don't even really focus on retail, right? FIA was never brought up here. You talked about when I was here, 2010 is roughly, or 2014, I believe is when I started here or first came here. And if you go back and look then, there was no retail trading discussions. That has changed because volumes speak for themselves. The retail trader is here to stay, and the retail trader is a lot more sophisticated than I think people give him credit for.
And it may be too soon to tell, but obviously, new administration, a lot of volatility in the markets, some pretty big moves the past week. Curious how you're seeing the retail traders reacting in this environment, if you're able to gauge that.
Well, I will tell you this. I put a tweet out about this. Can we call it a tweet still? We can call it a post. It's hard to go from a tweet to a post. It's just not natural. But I put a tweet about this and I said, right now, the undisciplined are going to get punished and they'll fail, and the disciplined and the patient will thrive. And I think that's one of the defining characteristics between a retail trader. And like I said, retail trader, I think is pretty great now, because I think you could be a trader who just started yesterday, or a trader who's been trading for 20 years, who's got, several $100,000 in their account. They both might be classified as retail, although they're very different. But when you look at, I think a defining characteristic that's different is that a retail trader comes into a market like this, has never seen it before, no experience, and they're going to struggle because the volatility is going to get the best of them. They're going to have FOMO, they're going to overtrade, and they're just going to be click happy and be unsuccessful. It's likely what we're seeing a lot of right now. And I think that that's a problem that I'm hoping with NinjaTrader Live and just other things we're doing at NinjaTrader, trader development, trader engagement, to help traders make better decisions in the moment. Because remember, trading is an in-the-moment business. And when you get moments like this, a lot of traders blow up because they just mentally aren't prepared for these types of markets. Again, I think that it's funny, as far as we've come, it's still kind of archaic in the sense of, and we say archaic, it's still, electronic trading still really new, right? If you think about a timeline of life. But everyone's still point and click, right? Automation, the big boys do it. Well, there's a lot of people at NinjaTrader doing it, but I think a lot of retail traders are going to start moving into that world. Some form of automation. It could be a hybrid model. Tell me when I should be buying or selling based upon these parameters, or it's buying and selling for me. And they can go into their AI tool that we have at Ninja and build that. So to me, that's something I think changes the game, and it helps the traders that are really committed get to the levels that they want to get to.
Alan Guarino, Vice Chairman of Korn Ferry. I think I've been coming to Boca since 2009 or 10, so 13 or 14 years.
And what brings you back?
Every year. It's actually the only conference I go to. In my industry, I could probably go to a conference a week. But to be honest, Boca is the epicenter of financial markets leaders who come together every year from around the world. So it's hugely efficient. It's run incredibly well. It's content rich. And I get the opportunity to meet people that would take me an entire year to travel the world to meet with if I had to go the old-fashioned way.
And I wanted to get into the people part with you, because a lot of the guests that we have on are either, providing technologies to markets, or they're focused on new products. You're focused on the people. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about your practice at Korn Ferry.
Korn Ferry, we're 11,000 people in 60 countries, and that covers the whole world of jobs, from middle-level management all the way to top executive CEOs. And that's not just recruitment, but nearly $1 billion of our revenue is leadership development and advisory. So think about things like top team effectiveness and so on, coaching, assessment, you name it. With that, if you're an exchange platform, if you're a large fintech, there's probably nothing on the talent supply chain that you'll need that Korn Ferry doesn't have, except for the tech itself. So if you want HRIS technology, you can buy that from people that we partner with. But if you need content and intellectual property that helps you drive a more powerful human resources function, that's the stuff that we do.
And I'm curious, have you seen the demands placed on executives, or the demands for certain types of skill sets changing over the years?
The answer is yes, for sure. I started in this business in the mid to late 90s in terms of markets. And I tell people there were two people on a phone trading stocks, and they were charging 6 cents a share per side of the trade, right? Fast forward with some regulatory changes and some technology enhancements, and 90% or more now of all stock trades happen without human intervention, right? They're matched electronically. So with that, a lot changed. I clearly, this work fits inside Korn Ferry's fintech practice. There's a reason that stock exchanges, major clearing platforms, And certainly all the technology businesses that support markets sit in our fintech practice because exchanges are actually tech companies. They happen to do things that have financial instruments involved, but they are technology companies. And so years ago, when we would do recruiting, we might think about taking people from major investment banks and getting them to join an exchange. Just like now with the major investment banks, we're thinking about people coming from big tech companies to come and take top leadership jobs at exchanges and at the big banks, as opposed to looking to cross-pollinate from square peg to square hole, bank to bank. So it's been fascinating to see.
No, and it's a fascinating transition. I'm curious, when you look at the folks who, and many of our listeners are in the technology space, so folks that are working more on the pure technology side of the world, if they're interested in moving over into finance and these types of roles, like what's the challenge and what's the opportunity?
Well, when you think about the various tech roles, there's different challenges. So if you are a mid to senior level engineer, I think the transition is relatively simple because your engineering brilliance is what you're bringing. And whether you're writing algorithms for optimization of a supply chain technology, or you're writing algorithms to optimize trading technology, your genius is in your ability to engineer those algos. So I think that's a fairly easy move. When you're talking about leadership roles, like let's say a chief technology officer, not quite as easy to come into this without some domain experience in either a regulated industry or even better, coming from some experience within a financial services company to then go over to a tech company that is selling back to your former world, bank, brokerage, buy-side institution, something like that.
Joe Rea, I'm Chief Commercial Officer of Abex Exchange.
And because you're a potential 30-year veteran of the conference, I'm curious, how has it changed and evolved over the years?
It's certainly gotten bigger. It's the topics have changed over the years. When we started here when we were here in 2002, it was right after Enron defaulted. It was right after 9/11. It was a lot of different things happening in the marketplace. We saw the need for credit mitigation in OTC energy products for the domestic markets. And we launched Clearport, or what was turned into Clearport, in May of 2002. So it was right around the time, right after Boca, that we launched Clearport and became a necessary platform both on NYMEX and on ICE for credit mitigation in global markets. And I think that led to the use of financial futures in markets that a lot of the exchanges have now pivoted to versus what we're looking at in physical markets where they kind of turned away from.
What makes the meetings here different, though?
It is the decision makers. It's the heads of strategy, the heads of their markets, the CEOs of firms. And so that is really one of the most important parts. I mean, you go to a lot of conferences like the FIA Expo in Chicago. It's really the mid-office people, the operations people. This here is all the decision makers, the real heads of the exchanges. I mean, there's an exchange leadership panel. There's international exchange leadership panels. These are the folks there's regulators. I mean, we just left a meeting with the CFTC commissioner. We'll be meeting with several other senior decision makers in our various markets over the next day and a half.
Yeah, not to dig deeply into any trade secrets, but what sort of things you've been wanting to talk to people about this year?
I think it's just the awareness of our products that we're live now. Last year at this time, we weren't live. And so everybody's, following us for sure. They see our activity on social media, the announcements that we make on the new products, go live last June on our trades of lithium carbonate last Friday. That's an important thing, both from, we see our competitors very aware of us, but also the clearing members and the trading firms that are here are very aware of what we're doing and following us pretty closely.
And you mentioned when we were here last year together, the exchange hadn't launched yet. Now it's launched. Now 9 futures contracts are up and trading. Where do you think, or where do you want to be next year this time?
It's a good question. I think having the control of our own clearinghouse, right? The first clearinghouse that's been launched in over 2 decades gives us that runway to be creative, to be innovative, to listen to our customers, to launch products that they want and will trade. I would think that next year, if we have 9 now, if we don't have maybe 20 or 30, I'd be disappointed. I think that we have that runway to do that. And we have those products in our pipeline that we'll be rolling out. I think some have been made public already, some have not. And I think the market will be generally pleased with what we're launching. We've met with clearing members here that are not yet clearing members of ABAX, but in talking about some of the products that we're going to launch, that brings interest to them. And so some of the big banks in precious metals, some of the non-banks that are involved in battery metals. And so, yeah, there's a lot of interest in the products. By launching new products, we create more surface area, both with trading firms who are the customers of clearing firms and will be customers of ours, but also the clearing firms themselves.
Thanks again to all of our guests and to the FIA for partnering with us at Boca 50. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you would like to listen to the full interviews, they're available on our website, smartermarkets.media, on the SmarterMarkets Presents media page. They're also available on our second podcast channel, SmarterMarkets Presents, available on all major podcast platforms. We'll be back this Saturday morning with our regularly scheduled podcast. We hope you'll join us.
This episode was brought to you in part by ABAX Exchange, where trading in centrally cleared, physically deliverable LNG and carbon futures contracts is now underway. Ready for smarter markets? Contact us at onboarding@abax.exchange. That concludes this week's episode of Smarter Markets by ABAX. For episode transcripts and additional episode information, including research, editorial, and video content, please visit smartermarkets.media. Please help more people discover the podcast by leaving a review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. Smarter Markets is presented for informational and entertainment purposes only. The information presented on Smarter Markets should not be construed as investment advice. Always consult a licensed investment professional before making investment decisions. The views and opinions expressed on Smarter Markets are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the show's hosts or producer. Smarter Markets, its hosts, guests, employees, and producer, ABAX Technologies, shall not be held liable for losses resulting from investment decisions based on informational viewpoints presented on Smarter Markets. Thank you for listening, and please join us again next week.